Hello. So we're going to talk a bit and play around a bit with motivational interviewing. That's what I was told to do anyway. So, before I get started, I'd like to kind of know what you know about MI, or were any of you here the last time that I was here in April? Yeah. Okay, some of you look familiar. I'm never quite sure. I do a lot of speaking and I have my own students, and so faces can sometimes blur after a while. My apologies. So if you remember that or something from that, that'd be great. Or if there was something that you wished you got more from that time, this is a good time to tell me. Okay, since it's a smaller group, we can kind of do whatever you want. That's good news about that. No, I'm not wedded to that stuff. I just put it up there so there's something to look at. So what do you remember about motivational interviewing, either when I talked about it in April or that you just know yourself? Yeah.
I guess I'm interested in it because you elicit the motivations of the person that they don't necessarily know that they even have for the change. And so you kind of uncover that through conversation, and then it becomes much more impactful for them to feel it in their own self. Oh, this is coming from me.
Right.
And that's why.
Yeah, it's not somebody from the outside telling you what to do, which is what they're usually used to. I mean, many of us are used to that, because that's the old way of doing things. And?
So I'm new to the program, and I've just been going through coaching this semester.
Oh, terrific. Okay.
Just the simple acronym of DARS has been like so helpful in my first coaching sessions with clients.
Which stands for?
Desire, ability, reason, need.
Very good.
So
You get a gold star for that.
Using that when I'm doing notes, and it's really helpful to come back to like, okay, these were some of the, or just like keep track of like, I know there's like this many ticks and like, you know, need and reason, and so it sort of helps to assess where they are in terms of being ready to change. Yeah.
It's a time to move into talking about making a plan, actually setting a date for change, something like that, or not. Exactly. Exactly. Great. Did you talk about the other side, Kat? Okay.
Did we talk about but it? I remember reading about it, but
yeah. It just may not be there yet, as far as where you are.
Yeah.
Okay. And anybody else?
Yeah. I think that motivational interviewing empowers the client to find solutions rather than, which is kind of happening with after answer, yes. Part of the lesson, so it's actually coming from the client and it's actually empowering. With addiction works very well.
Although it does work with most everything else that we've tried it with. You know, so far so good. The fastest growing area is probably criminal justice.
Oh.
Yeah, which even surprised Bill Miller. He wasn't sure how they were going to do kind of that ambivalence piece with criminal justice, since that's a mandated environment. But just because you're mandated doesn't mean you don't have a choice. I say you can always decide you're going to go to Mexico and screw this country. It's happened. It doesn't happen very often. In fact, surprisingly, it doesn't happen more often. But, you know, people really do want to get through whatever it is. So what it winds up becoming is a way of helping someone to make a decision over what they want to do and how to get through the things the court has said they have to do in order to get whatever the carrot is, right? Their driver's license, their kids back, their job, could be a variety of different things. There should be a book on that coming out soon. I thought it would be out already, but it hasn't come out. If you go to Guilford.com, I think it's Guilford.com, might be Guilford Press. I don't have my usual bag with me, so apologies. The Guilford is the publishing company, and the third edition of MI is on the back table. You could look there. You'll see all of the different books that are in the series of called Motivational Interviewing Series now. And there are, I want to say there were 7, and I think now we've added 3 or 4 more just in the last year. There's one in nursing. There's another one that's for clients about making change. I can't remember what the other ones are. You can also get a discount, by the way. Sometimes Amazon will be cheaper, and sometimes Guilford has better discounts going on. But if you enter my code, which is MINT, which stands for the Motivational Interviewing Network of Trainers, which I'm part of, because you've been to a training of mine or a workshop of mine, you've been coached by me, whatever it is, in any of those instances, you can use my code and always get a 20% discount. I believe any Guilford book, I don't think it has to be just MI.
Is that Guilford, like G-U-I-L-D?
G-U-I-L-F-O-R-D.
Okay.
Yeah. Grab the book back here. By the way, I also brought just a couple of my books. I happen to have some in hard copy, well, soft cover, but hard copy, if anyone's interested in that. Guilford.com, yep. And they're also, my cards and brochures are back there, so feel free to take one or two of those if you want. I'm good at responding to emails. Sometimes it takes me 48 hours. If it takes longer, it means it's midterms or finals. And I'm overwhelmed. But otherwise, I try very hard to get back to folks within 48 hours. Okay, so what would you like to know about MI? What do you feel like you might be lacking, or you have more interest in that you haven't talked about?
I would like to get better at just asking the powerful questions at the right time.
Okay.
The kind of time between waiting and knowing when to push the question.
Mm-hmm. How to do that here? I'm not sure. That would be really good for coaching. Yeah. A great thing to be doing in an MI coaching group.
Right.
Unfortunately, I don't have one anymore. But you might consider doing that here sometime, if you decide. Setting up an MI coaching group so that you have, somebody like me could set it up for you, and then it could run by itself. But it's essentially a place to go to talk about MI and to talk about cases and to run through either dialogue or listen to tapes that you've done and see, am I using MI, have I missed change talk in here someplace?
Exactly.
Because it's really about missed opportunities, right?
Mm-hmm.
Not so much about right and wrong as it is missed opportunities. And so we want to take advantage of those opportunities. But I can't do that if I don't know what I'm listening for. So it's a place to practice and get your ear in tune.
I feel like that's what it needs to be for me.
Yeah.
It's always, letting that go is, can be frustrating at times.
Yeah.
Because the client doesn't know a lot of times, right? So you're the one supposed to be listening with your ear.
Right.
Yeah, so.
Right. I call it listening between the lines. Because that to me is what it's about. It's not just listening to what you said. It's really listening to what you didn't say.
Mm-hmm.
And some of listening to what you said. That can be included as well, and then kind of forming my ideas based on that, and then sending it back to you in the form of a reflection, saying, kind of, is that what you mean? Well, in fact, that's an exercise we can do. So we can do a little of that practice. I brought that one with me. Yeah, keep going.
How do you listen between the lines without ever fearing an assumption?
I do make assumptions. Assumptions are good.
They are.
Yep. This is where MI diverts from counseling, from standard kind of counseling. We do make assumptions, and we make them all the time. That's what reflections are. But we're doing it in a way that doesn't say, necessarily, I don't use the words, I assume. Sure, I might on occasion, but mostly I don't. Mostly I just say, you'd really rather know more about this than that. And I just make it a statement.
Interesting.
and then let people respond to that. Either, yeah, I guess that is what I mean, or no, that's not what I mean at all. And then I can say, really, oh gosh, I really blew that one. Okay, tell me what you mean then. So now I know where not to go. But it helps, in doing that, it helps the client figure it out for themselves.
Which is the goal.
Which is the goal, right. Right. Sometimes I'll hear, you know, I never thought of it that way, or I never saw it in that kind of way. Those kinds of things. But mostly what I hear is probably what you hear, and that's, I don't know. My favorite words. It used to scare the bejesus out of me. Say, now what do I do?
Mm-hmm.
But that was when I thought I had to have all the answers. That's so irritating. But that's the way I was trained. You know, you're supposed to know, you're the one, you're the expert.
Mm-hmm.
You're gonna tell them how to make this change, because obviously they don't know how to do it or they'd be doing it.
Right, and what do you do, because what I've seen out there is, a lot of the clients still expect that.
Yeah.
And that's, you know, you're like.
Yeah, so I like to turn right into that.
Okay.
And say, you know, even Disneyland doesn't make pixie dust anymore.
Right.
And they don't. It really irritates me, by the way. I'm a Disneyland fan. So I had to find my own little bottle on eBay. And I'm guarding it. It's on my altar. And it's like, you know, and nothing personal, but if I did have some magic wand, I'd be using it on me first, and my friends and family, and then I'll be happy to share.
So you can just be that up front, huh?
Exactly. I use humor a lot in that sort of way, and say, you know, there is no magic solution. I don't know what to do. But what I do know is that you're capable of making change because you've made change, and we've talked about that. So my job is not to come up with the change for you. My job is to help you find your own way out of those woods and come up with your own plan. And you can do that, absolutely. So it's helping, I think, people understand what our role is now. That's more appropriate and it works better. Right? If beating the crap out of people worked, I would still be doing that. That's how I was trained about 30 years ago. Verbally. Just giving them a dressing down. We used to call it a haircut. Just snap you out of it. Lob some of that hair off of you. Which was your ego. Yeah.
And what to do in the situation when the client, every session, she builds the goals, she's so excited to do it, and then she tells me each Monday, she's like, well, on Monday I'm so excited and I'm motivated after I meet you, but then the rest of the week goes kind of down the hill.
Mm-hmm.
And
that's pretty typical.
Yeah. So, and she's like, I need extra motivation, you know.
Uh-huh.
It's kind of screaming at me.
In enthusiasm, I get it, right.
And I'm trying to give her compassion, self-care, self-love, understand you're busy, and being all soothing.
You're trying to fix it.
I'm trying to kind of, I know it's a hard work with achieving major goals, you know, and I'm trying to tell her, be slow on yourself, enjoy small victories and small little steps, but I don't know, she's frankly saying, it's hard, I'm not going to do this, and I need some motivation. And, you know, it's different clients, different situations, but with her, I find that, I don't know, what would, again, no magic.
Right. I mean, one of the things that I might consider doing is to ask her what would motivate her. What would help?
She's always like, well, I had no job and all the time in my life.
Okay.
You know, but this,
Okay, so, and then I like to go to the amplified reflections and sort of saying, so, you know, with this job and with all the things that you have to do, there is absolutely no way that you can make this change. You can't even begin to make this change. You can't even think about it. I mean, really kind of take it to its exaggerated end. Most people will pull back from that and will say, well, I don't know if I can't even think about it. I mean, here I am talking about it, so I guess I can think about it. Oh, okay, so you can think about it. So what's the baby step between thinking about it and thinking about one little step to do? Rather than, because for most people, and I might even ask her if I could give her a little bit of information, if that would be okay. And again, people always say yes, you know, because that's why they're there mostly, but they're curious why you've asked oftentimes. It's a way of building rapport, right? And so I don't come across as the expert. And I might say one of the things that I know about change is that a lot of people get caught up in the final change, right? Rather than understanding that change is going to take these baby steps through it. And if we can celebrate those baby steps, or at least acknowledge it, it might feel like you're doing something. What do you think about that? And I'm going to give it back to her. And let her have her opinion. She could say, well, I think you're full of shit. I've had that happen. And I've said, you could be right. Sure. What do I know? Well, just because I know how change happens for most people, it doesn't mean I know anything about how it's going to happen for the person that's sitting next to me or across from me.
I like your kind of presence of with humor and a little bit harshness, and we here used to, like, my style is more like, oh, compassion,
I would say I'm direct.
It's fine in your
Yeah, I am direct. Yeah.
Fine tuning the style.
Yeah.
And you know, sometimes I have this love, but get a grip on it.
You know, it's really, and all of that is part of helping clients get that idea that, you know, I'm not going to fix you. Because first of all, I don't think you're broken. People aren't broken. Pipes get broken. Cars get broken. You know, inanimate objects get broken. You know, people don't get broken. People may need some help, but we all need help from time to time. So, you know, in this country, we have a big deal about asking for help. It's really, really hard. It's ridiculous because everybody needs help. There was some wealthy person recently that I read a quote about, and I want to say it was somebody like Thomas Edison, but he wasn't that giving, so it couldn't have been him. But somebody like him, that he was a bit of an ass, that said, even though I have all the money and the fame around this, I didn't do this on my own. You know, I stand on the shoulders of all of these other people that came before me. And we always do. Even though it looks like we did it on our own, that's really a myth. And I like that idea. So, and so I sometimes offer that to a client if they're willing, and you know, they give me permission to do that. I do sometimes give advice. Again, I'll ask them, would it be okay if I shared with you, you know, an idea that kind of popped into my head? Now, if I hear from them, oh yeah, I tried that, but it didn't work, kind of thing, then I stop immediately. Because all that's going to happen is the next thing I say, they're going to say the same thing. And that's going to pull me in to this rut. And now I'm in the trap of being the expert. And they're looking to me to pull them out.
What happens?
Yep, and it does. And I have learned, I still get pulled in on occasion, not as much anymore, and I'm faster about getting myself out. So I've learned that. But we can all get stuck in it from time to time.
Because it's so prevalent, because it's what everybody's used to.
Mm-hmm. Well, that, and we're often working with people who are in real pain.
Yeah.
And there are still occasions when I would like to say, I'm working with a guy who, right now, who is pushing my buttons and I have to watch it. That's my litmus test. And I'm not sure why, but it's kind of interesting for me to stand back and look at that. And he has terrible social anxiety. And his head just goes nuts. Yeah. So if I said, just my saying that, he would then think, oh my God, she doesn't like me, she won't see me anymore, she doesn't want to work with me anymore because I'm such a pain in the ass, so I better not even show up. And it was, where did you get that? You know, I mean, it's like, you know, way off on some other planet. And this is where he goes. So he sits at work, contemplating the fact that he's going to get fired. And, you know, I'm like, is there any evidence for this? What's happened? What? Nothing. Absolutely nothing. Almost a state of delusion, it's that severe. So, you know, this is a guy that I would on occasion just shake and say, snap out of it, you know, cut it out. This is not really happening to you. But that would not be appropriate. This is his world, right? It's not about him coming to my world, it's about me going to his world. And part of that is just my old training coming back because I'm feeling inadequate in the moment. I'm feeling stuck. I'm feeling it because I think I'm supposed to do something. The only thing that I need to do is to listen. That's really my job, is just to listen and to help him to sort through whatever's going on. I can do that. You all can do that. It's not as complicated as we like to make it out to be, in some ways. Not suggesting it's easy, I think it's not as complicated. Anything else? Okay. All right, so let me suggest, oh, I love it when it's an even group. Okay. Let's go to, I decided to pull out some old exercises, but they're really good because they show how, when we do reflections, which is the meat and potatoes of motivational interviewing, of OARS. OARS stands for? Open-ended questions. You can look down. Yeah. I know. Affirmations, reflections, and summaries. In OARS is the skill set that you want to have. So OARS plus MI spirit equals actually doing MI. You can use OARS without spirit, but then you're not really doing MI. You're doing cognitive behavioral therapy, which is fine at other times. We're talking about MI. Make sense? All right. And reflections are what we use more of than questions. All right? Now, I like to think of it as the difference between a rock and a pebble going into a pool of water. If you put a pebble into the water, what does it do? Right? Little, it kind of quietly kind of opens us up. If you put a rock in, not a boulder, but you know, a rock, what does that do? Splashes, makes a bigger to-do, right? Still does the same thing, but a bigger to-do. So sometimes you want a little more drama, or perhaps you want to stop the conversation. A question will do that, a closed one. Open questions and reflections tend to be the pebble in the water and allow the conversation to move along without interruption. What we find is that the conversation gets deeper on an emotional level using reflections than it does using questions of any kind. And of course, the other thing is that after 2 or 3 questions in a row, people are going to start thinking that they're being interrogated, and we say, even if it's motivational interrogation, it's still interrogation. So, you know, we don't want to do that. And I don't want to give the impression that closed questions are bad. It's just about timing of when to use things. Okay? So, reflections are layered, one on top of another. You get there. And you're probably going to start out with a simple reflection. So if you, can you say something to me, please?
I want to meditate every day.
You want to meditate every day, and it's hard to find time. Simple, right? Just repeating back, it's parroting. So say it again for me.
I want to meditate every day, but it's hard to find time.
You know, it's really hard for you to find time, and yet meditation is really important to you. That's a double-sided reflection. I have shown both sides of the ambivalence, plus, which way did I end? Did I end on the side of change or no change? Right, and I did that purposefully. If I want to draw out change, if I want people to talk about change, I better end on change. Because otherwise, if I do it the other way and say, so meditation is really important to you, but it's really hard to find the time. You see where you are? Right. And where she's left, responding is, yeah, it really is hard to find the time, right? We're in that negative side.
Justifying.
Now, sometimes I want to explore that. Again, it's not that it's always bad. It's just that most of the time, I'd rather be on the side of change. How do I know when to shift? Well, if you push back. If I'm on the side of change and you keep pushing to not change, okay, then I better come alongside you and say, you know, it sounds like maybe this just isn't the right time to make this change. What do you think?
No, I think I want
That's often what people wind up doing. Right? Or I've even had somebody say, well, what are you saying? Are you saying like I can't do it? That's an interesting interpretation. Where'd you get that from? And they kind of calm down. Yeah. Okay.
Is there like a kind of list of those formulas that can help to form sentences so that we have structure?
Right there. The additional handout.
Is it the one? Oh, this?
There's open questions. If you go to the next page, there's affirmations. That's the A. Then there's 3 pages of reflections, all the different kinds. And the last one is summaries. Yep, and how to make them. Yep, you got it. Okay, want to try one? So I'm going to have you do this one in dyads and pairs. And let's see, I will write it up here. That's going to be one thing I like about myself is, and the response, so this is the speaker, the listener is just going to use yes or no. We're starting out baby step. Now this is not the way you would do it with a client. This is to build the skill. Okay? Don't get confused. So one thing I like about myself is I'm organized. So you would say, do you mean that? Actually, we're going to say, you mean that. We're going to make it a statement already. So this would be an am I appropriate statement. You mean that, what might I mean by that? You're guessing, here's your assumptions. What might I mean by tidy?
I wouldn't say this, but like you like to be in control.
Okay, you like to be in control. No. No, but that's a perfectly good guess. Absolutely. Okay?
But
Go ahead.
where does it yes or no? Why did we have?
We're statement.
Because I'm going to say yes or no. That's my mistake. Thank
Yes,
you.
see?
This is what happens.
Oh, okay.
It doesn't work with the formula.
And speaker, oops. Listener, sorry. Let me pay attention here for a minute. Listener,
Do you mean that?
you mean that. We don't want to make it a question. We want to get used to making statements. So it's easier.
So
So I'm just going to change that. So you mean that. Okay? So let's say you mean that you manage your time well. That could be another one. Right? You mean that you always know where to find things. You mean that you get a lot of things done. Any of those would be perfectly acceptable, and might be what I mean. You keep your desk neat. And this is what this person meant by it, was, you mean you're difficult to live with? And they responded, yes.
Wow, it's all about assumptions.
Right, right. And you can say to yourself, I would never have thought of that, right? That's the point. That oftentimes we use words with each other and we think we know what somebody means by it, but we don't really know what they mean by it. We're assuming that we do in our own head, but it's not coming out. So it's really a fun exercise in that sense.
It's a risk-taker's job.
Yeah, yeah, it is. But it's fun that way. It's always different.
Yeah.
Okay, so does that make sense? Did I do that better that time? Okay, great. So I'm going to give you, 10 minutes, maybe 5 minutes for each person. Do you want me to stop you after 5 minutes and switch you? Okay, I will do that. It's an exercise, I guess, to help us to think about reflections, how to make them, and to understand that we don't always know what we think we know. Sometimes we do.
We were right.
Yeah, we were right.
Do you two, do you know each other?
They all know each other.
Yeah.
Not too much.
And so if you know each other pretty well, you might be better in sync. Not always though. I mean, sometimes you can get surprised. So did everybody get a chance? Both ways? Good, yeah, okay. Terrific. So that is something that we call, starting to think in reflection, just considering it. That's really the first step. So if I'm doing a big class in motivational interviewing, that would be one of the first things that I would teach, one of the first exercises I would use. Again, for this whole idea of layering. And I want to layer teaching reflections too, because again, it's the meat and potatoes. It's also the hardest thing for people with any kind of counseling background to learn, because it's not what we get taught. It's quite the opposite of what we get taught. So it can be hard.
Do they still teach that way in counseling?
I'm sorry?
Do they still teach that way in counseling?
No. No. In counseling, we're taught to question.
But not today. Do they change that, or they still teach that way?
Oh, they still teach that
Or
way.
they don't?
Yeah, so it can be a hard shift sometimes to do the reflections. Also, particularly here in the States, people get taught to make questions out of everything. So even if you make a statement, right? So you really want your desk to be tidy? Right? Yeah, because I'm hesitating. Right. Now it's interesting that in some studies, clients have said that they don't like it when we do that, because it makes them feel that we don't know what we're talking about. They would rather have us be wrong, but make a statement. So you want your desk tidy. Just say it. And they'll go, yeah, well, I don't know if that's that big of a deal. But boy, my partner sure gets on me for it if my desk and okay, now we're gonna head in that direction. Now maybe I know better what's going on in the relationship. Something like that. So the second one is going to be, and this time we want to, we'll do 3. Can I get your help, Sarah? Do you mind being an observer?
Don't mind at all.
And coming up here though and doing it? I need that. So I'm going to put you in groups of 3, triads, so that one person can be an observer this time. And we'll shift things around. Oh, we're fine. And this time, I'm going to give you some stems that you can use. Okay. Just take my little cheat sheet here. listener. Okay. View that. That. So there's more. Now, the speaker is going to do one thing. I would like to, oops, change about myself is. Okay. And we want to keep it in characteristics or attributes, that sort of thing, not, you know, I want to change my gray hair. You know, that, something like that. That's not really going to work very well. We're not going to get very far with that. Right, so. Okay, so it's not very much different than the one we just did, just slightly different. And again, think of the building process. So this one is, this exercise is known as forming reflections. Because before we weren't forming the full reflection yet. We were just kind of, you know, baby stepping our way. Now we're really going to do a reflection. And the reflection is going to start like one of these, or there's others you can use too.
I don't quite understand why what we did before wasn't a reflection.
Well, it was a partial reflection.
Why?
Because we didn't do, we weren't looking to do a whole reflection. It was better than the original exercise. Because in the original exercise, they have people saying, do you mean that? And many of us trainers took it out because then people got confused when we got to this one about making a statement. And remember, that's already something people get confused about. You know, I did make a statement. No, listen again, you asked a question. Your voice went up on the end, right? People have a hard time putting that voice down on the end. So that's why we changed it. So it's a little bit closer to a reflection as a result of that. But this time we're going to go a little further.
I guess I don't understand how this is further.
Because now we're talking about thinking and feeling. We have different ways of, we're going a little further.
Okay. So like what we'll be reflecting back will probably be deeper just because this opens up more.
We'll do this with me. How's that? And maybe I'll show, maybe I'm wrong. It's been a long time since I've done these exercises. These are not ones I generally use anymore. So, and I used them for some reason recently, and you know how you pull something out and go, gosh, I really like that dress. Why don't I wear that anymore? You know, it's sort of the same idea. Why don't I do these anymore? Because they're really helpful. And we had talked about doing reflections. So, okay. You are starting with one thing I'd like to change about myself is, and of course you're going to have to come up with something. Be nice if it was real.
Yeah.
You didn't have to.
One thing I'd like to change about myself is to not eat so many sweets.
To not eat so many sweets. Okay. Seems to you that you're eating way too much junk.
Not quite.
Okay?
But yeah.
Okay. You're thinking that it's really the sugar that's causing you trouble. And that's what you'd like to stop eating so much of.
Yeah.
Okay. So that time I got more to it. Now I could keep going. Sounds like maybe you're looking at making a change at a time of year that's going to be kind of tough. What do you make of that?
I think I will be flexible.
Okay, so this isn't the hard and fast rule that you have to be perfect on this. And come the holidays, then maybe you'll even feel better about eating some of the sugary sweets because you won't have had any. Which would be a nice treat. Okay? So that's how I can keep using those to get further and further and further. So when I'm doing this well, I can maybe ask 2 questions in a 10 or 15 minute period.
Because the person will keep.
because they keep
a little
talking.
bit more.
Right. Right, and so I can just drop those pebbles in. Yeah. And that's what we want, just for the person to keep talking. So the next thing I have to resist is the urge to want to fill the space if they're not talking. Uh-huh. Very good. Yes, we do this when we do trainings. That's part of it. Yeah. So does that make sense? Was that better?
Yeah,
In
I
the
mean, I
sense
think
of,
it would be good to just
makes more sense.
do it.
Good, thanks. Thanks for doing that with me too. Okay, so everybody come up with something you'd like to change. And it'll be in threes. Again, somebody will be an observer each time. So I'm gonna give you 15 minutes. And I'll stop you after each 5 and have you shift, and then we'll come back and talk about it all together. We'll talk about suicide the other day. Not in a gesture, and he was talking about it. And I said, you know, I've always been fascinated with people who are going to commit suicide. And they state they're going out to commit suicide. And they get in their car because they're going someplace to do it. And they put their seatbelt on. Isn't that fascinating? Because this person was talking about suicide, but was in my office.
Is that reframing?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely, it's reframing. Yeah, it's taking a piece of something and sort of twisting it around, and just saying, aren't those things curious? So, one of the things that might be, what's usually true with people who are talking about suicide, and I mean in a therapeutic setting, not, you know, at the dinner table someplace. That's a whole lot different and much more urgent. You know, this is in a therapeutic setting, right? If you really want to commit suicide, why would you go in and talk to your counselor therapist who is there, right? You wouldn't. That doesn't make any sense at all. So you're in there talking to me about it, and if I say something like, I'm wondering if one of the things that you're looking for is a way to make the pain stop more than to really stop breathing. Now that is usually the case, that people just are so tired of being in pain. And you know, it doesn't matter what kind of pain, because I'm going to assume you don't know this, but forgive me if you do. Our brains analyze pain and they interpret it all the same. They don't know if it's spiritual pain or mental pain or emotional pain or physical pain. Pain is pain for our brains. And so people are truly in pain when they say that. When we talk about our heart being broken, it is a feeling. We can feel that in our chest, right? That it's actually hurting. It's not something psychosomatic. So in that idea, usually fits for people. And that's a reframing around suicide meaning dying. I'm changing the frame on the picture. And when we do that, we can change the picture that's inside completely, right? Have you ever had anything framed? And sort of hold different frames up? You go, ooh, that looked terrible, right? But something else would look really good. It would enhance the picture. What we try to do is to do it along the lines of change talk. So we want to bring in some change talk. So how people are talking about change, the difference that might make, so that it's more positive. Which is kind of what I'm doing with the suicide thing. Right? And shifting that away from death to end of pain, and to appreciate that that's where they are. You must really be in a lot of pain to be thinking that that's your only option.
And then they say, yes, I am.
Mhm.
And then, I mean, that's, we're not therapists. And then, just I'd be
No, but you can still use key questions, and I don't know if those are in your packet or not. I can't remember. There's so much to I really limit things. The key questions are what I use a ton of when I feel like I'm stuck and I am getting ready to take charge again, like in something like that. Yes, I do feel that way.
Right.
And they're looking at you like, now what, right?
Yeah.
And then I say to them, so where does that leave you? What do you think you want to do at this point? What should your first step be to shift out of this then? And sometimes I'll get a, well, I don't know. Okay, let's talk about that, okay? Let's think. So when you've been in this situation before, tell me a little bit about that. How have you gotten out of it in the past? Because they can't say, well, I've never gotten out of it before. Because obviously you have, because you're sitting here. And that's what the reframing can help with sometimes, that people believe that their reality is the only reality. And I'm not challenging their reality. I'm saying, fine, that is a reality. And here's a couple of others that might be possible. And I told my severely socially phobic person, so what would it be like if you decided that people were talking about you, but they were saying good things? I mean, since you don't know what they're saying anyway, they could be saying bad things, sure. And they could just as easily be saying good things. So why not just figure they're saying the good things? What do you think? Am I completely crazy? He kind of looked at me and said, yeah, I think you are. Okay, yeah, but I'll think about it. I don't know. I mean, it's just, again, a reframe to suggest something else. Yeah, that's all I'm going for at that point. Does that help at all?
Yeah, that does help. I feel like that just sounds really hard to me, reframing.
Okay.
I feel like of all these things, that will take me the most practice.
Okay.
To, like, get.
Then my suggestion, if I could, would be to use it at times when you feel like you already have a rapport with that person and you're feeling comfortable. Yeah, you might even warn them, I want to try something new. I'm going to say something, and this might be totally awful, but would it be okay if I tried something? I find clients that would go, yeah, sure, go ahead. And now they're really engaged, right? What are you going to do? But yeah, we always suggest that when you're trying MI to not do it with your worst clients, right? The ones that you're really apprehensive about. Do it with people that you're really comfortable with, because it's new. I mean, if some part of it is new that you're trying to get better at. Yeah. So you want one more exercise? Okay. Let's see. I'll give you this one. So I've got back to pairs again. You can work with the same people, you can work with different folks. Totally up to you. Everybody where they want to be. Too cold to move? Yeah, no. There you go. You. Oops. Uh-huh. This is OARS Scrabble. Oops. And you will find the person that I just gave the OARS Scrabble tiles to will be the first listener. So hopefully I got every other person. Two, right, yeah, okay. And here's the deal. You have, Scrabble person, tile person, you have 2 O's, 2 A's, 6 R's, and 2 S's. Okay? I'd like you to have a conversation with your partner. Oh, what do you want to talk about? Let's talk about how you came to come to this school, get into this field, something along those lines. Okay? So you're just having a conversation, just a nice, normal conversation. However, you can only ask 2 questions. You can give 6 reflections, along with 2 affirmations and 2 summaries. When you're out of tiles of a certain letter, you can no longer do that, whatever it is. Which usually it's the O's that go first.
So what are they?
Open-ended questions.
Open-ended questions, the O's. Okay. So you've got 2 open-ended questions, 2 affirmations, 6 reflections, and 2 summaries. And summaries are really just a group of reflections. Let's see if I understand what you've said so far. Okay, does that make sense?
So one of us is sharing and the other person is trying to get more understanding.
reflections.
Yep. Yeah. So again, this is my way of shaping your conversation, and these are the metrics, if you will, that we would coach you to. To be using twice as many reflections as open questions. That's sort of the ratio that we want. That's
Twice
why,
as many reflections as open.
yeah, that's why it's shaped that way. But give it a try, see how it goes. You know, I'll give you 5 minutes. I'll ring the little bell. You can shift, and so everybody gets a shot at it. You just hand your tiles to the other partner. And 5 more minutes, and then we'll talk about it briefly afterwards and close up. Okay? Well, I started using, it was something I was home from college for a summer working, it was when the .com was happening here. And so he was working at some .com place, making oodles of money, making me sick. Said, you're making how much? You're in your first year of college? Wait a minute. Anyway, and we were talking about something that we always had a fight about. I think it was throwing his wet towels on the floor or something like that. And to me, it was always, oh, for crying out loud, Jesse, the washing machine is just as far as your bed is when you come down from the shower. I mean, it's either turn left or right. Well, why don't you turn right? Jump it there. I don't, just in the general vicinity. And so we had this battle, and I had gone to New Mexico and trained with Bill and the folks there at the University of New Mexico. So I came back and said something about the fact that he was really tired and just was feeling irritated about my constantly nagging him around this wet towel. Like, yeah, I'm sick and tired of this. You know, that's all you ever seem to harp on me about. And you really would prefer if I just didn't bring it up anymore. Yeah, you know. And then he stopped, kind of put his hand on his hip and looked at me and said, okay, what stupid training have you gone to this time? So you're kind of wondering what training I went to. And you can tell something's changed. All right, that's enough. You know, but one thing led to another, and what it taught me was how important and valuable it was to listen. But I realized as a mother, I had not listened to him well for a long time, frankly. You know, I thought it was my job to tell him things. Right? That's being a mom, much in the same way as being a good counselor was telling you how to run your life. Like mine was so bloody perfect. And, you know, I mean, come on now. And, you know, so it's like, wait a minute, that's not it at all. It's about listening and really caring. And as he was getting older, because he was 18, 19 at that point, it was really great I got that lesson then. Otherwise, I don't think we'd have a relationship. He's 36 now. You know, that might have been all that time lost that I couldn't have gotten back again, just because I couldn't learn to shut my mouth and listen to him for a while and think, gosh, he really can make his own decisions. And if it's a disaster, well, it's a disaster. He'll figure it out.
I had a similar experience with my 14-year-old. Yeah, he came home and he told me the story and all, and I immediately jumped into what we should do to solve this problem. He was 14.
Yep.
And he goes, you know, I never should have told you. You always do this. And I'm like, so how should I have responded? And he's like, I don't know. But then, you know, kind of started the coaching.
Yeah.
Well, you know, were you hoping that I would do such and such? Yes. That's good.
Yeah. It really is important. Thanks. Thank you, sister. I mean, because what I learned to do with Jesse was throughout college, because he was in LA for college, and he would call. I was living in the city, and say, "Okay, Jesse, do you want advice or do you want me to just listen?" And he'd always say, maybe twice I got to give him advice in 10 years. It was always, I want you to listen. And I said, I'm not going to lie to you and say there aren't times I got off the phone and cried. and thought, oh my God, this is going to be a disaster, you know, and I better get prepared. But I knew that he would call me back. And if I had done it the old way that I used to, he would not have. He just wouldn't have told me what happened.
What are you on the Enneagram?
I don't remember anymore. You know, it's been so long, and when I moved, I had to cull my books, and so those are the ones that, some of the ones I gave up. I don't remember anymore. You'd have to tell me.
One?
I don't know, see?
I don't know.
I don't
I'm
know.
just guessing.
Yeah, I did it years ago. I got trained in that early on.
But it's
ruled out enough for a
It
while.
doesn't,
No,
it's fine, I'm never gonna talk to people like, oh, you're.
Yeah.
But, no. It's too
I
organized.
don't remember. You could call me anything.
Do you, well, it's wonderful that you can apply the learnings to
Mhm.
your life. And that's what I hope that every one of us can get from coaching.
Yeah,
Just to
I mean,
bring it
isn't
back
that
to
the
your
point?
own-
If we're gonna go to school for this long and spend all this money, we better be able to use it more than just with a client.
Right?
Yeah, yeah. Absolutely, absolutely, it better improve my
That's the
life.
motivation,
Yeah.
When they say
Oh, I like
yes,
that.
I guess, ultimately.
But when
Great. Well, thank you so much, everybody. You're terrific. Woo-hoo! Now let's get out of this cold room, huh? Jeez.
it's the only room that's conditioned in a day.
I know.